Hey everyone, and welcome back to Fuel Poverty Action series of monthly learning sessions, Fuel for Thought, from fuel poverty to climate justice. As I'm sure most of you will know, Fuel Poverty Action is a group of ordinary people fed up with being robbed by greedy energy companies through spiraling bills and rip-off prepayment meters. We campaign to protect people from fuel poverty. We challenge rip-off energy companies and unfair policies that leave people to endure cold homes, and we take action for warm, well-insulated homes and clean and affordable energy that's under the control of people and communities, not private companies. And Fuel for Thought is our space to share research and lived experience, tackle lies, and clear up confusion as we ask and answer questions with experts, activists, and campaigners. And today we're here to discuss how we can effectively campaign at a local level and put pressure on national government to rethink their priorities as we do it. This is quite important, as you know, we think that the Labour government is abandoning vulnerable communities and vulnerable people, and getting organised now will make all the difference between a far-right government in 4 years or winning for the working classes and the planet. And without further ado, I'm going to introduce our first speaker, who is Katrina Eastgate, who's the ACORN organiser for Knowle West, Bristol, currently supporting local residents to collaborate on campaigns to improve the conditions of social and private rented housing in a historically deprived area. And Kat's going to be talking a little bit about this and more. Kat, take it away.
Thank you so much. So for those of you who don't know, ACORN is a community union. We use collective action and classic union tactics to advocate for our members. And besides winning change, we also want to be strengthening these communities, getting people to realise their collective and individual power. And so when we talk about getting people organised, trying to get them, influencing their MPs or their local councillors, actually the act of getting them to that point is half the battle. And in areas like where I work in Knowle West, people don't have a lot of trust. They don't have a lot of feeling that these types of things are available to them or made for them. So a big part of what we're doing is taking on issues that resonate really deeply with these types of like these areas. So that often is things like housing conditions, renters' rights. We're seeing a lot of things around like bailiffs and debt at the moment as well. And it brings people together on something that like feels very immediate, and often the people who are directly affected, they're the ones making the calls. So we do also do local and national campaigns, and so these can tackle things like council policies, housing associations, elected politicians. So we then can scale up those tactics that someone's used on an individual case, and that can really, really build people from not thinking action is possible to actually being the people making calls and getting other people involved. I think some of the other speakers that I'm really excited to listen to are going to go into more depth on engaging with local politicians. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how we support people to collaborate and get to that point, first through these individual cases, then broader campaigns. So we call this member defence when we take on an individual case. I worked recently with a couple in Knowle West who had awful mold in their home, really health limiting, causing them lots and lots of problems. And they were what the industry calls going through reporting fatigue, which is they'd done it loads and it didn't work, so they stopped. They didn't even feel confident going to a counsellor's drop-in session. They just felt like they were going to get ignored and it would be more upsetting. So we brought together a group of members who are just local, ordinary people, and they spoke to the counsellors for them in the same way that like a union rep might. From this first action to where we are now, they're now able to speak for themselves. I've seen them challenging the head of repairs from Bristol City Council, and all of their repairs have been done. So they've seen what that collective action can do. They've been involved in other people's cases. And just this week, I got them calling up random strangers that they were talking to about like why it's so important to take collective action. So, I mean, that's the dream. We'd love to do that for everybody. But they now have a productive relationship with local councillors on an issue that they both care about. And it's because other people who are in the same position as them came along with them on that journey. And it means that we've now got a group of people who've seen each step of collective power working in their local community. And then when we start talking about those victories, when we talk about it on social media or regular media or in person, people can understand that there's a mechanism of power available to them, and it comes through the same people that they see every day, every week, not through protesters they see on the TV or someone with loads and loads of power that they can't relate to. When it comes to wider campaigns, people tend to have like a pre-existing idea of what campaigning's like, who it's for, and how it works. This can like feel really out of touch, even if it's related to issues that they really care about. So one of the ways that we try and bring people to the point where they feel like they're the ones who can and should be taking action is kind of the way we frame things. So like, we don't always use the jargony stuff. We don't necessarily talk about like the intricate mechanisms that need to work for something to be resolved. Most of it is talking about power. It's talking about who's doing what and who's got the decision making power to change things, and how those people are people like us. You know, they are people who will go home at the end of the day and see what's going on the news. They're people who will have friends and family in their life who have thoughts on what they do. And from there, you can start getting people to a point where they're like, oh, you know, this is actually somebody that can resonate in a way that, like, you know, unfortunately, sometimes you do need to ruin someone's day for them to listen to you. In Bristol, we're currently campaigning for the council to end the use of bailiffs for low-income people, because it just spirals people's debt and it can be really, really traumatic for a lot of families and individuals. In our latest action, we had a knight in a full suit of armour that, yeah, he had anyway. And these, you know, this is somebody who had been a member for a while but never really got that involved. And as soon as we had a conversation about his hobbies outside the union, he's now on like the front page of local media calling himself Sir ACORN, and he's signed up for a whole bunch of other activities. I really recommend checking it out. It's an amazing, amazing thing that he did. You know, people come to these campaigns as individuals. They've got their own quirks and interests. Like, finding ways that feel like what they're already doing can be the thing that gets someone in to, like, oh yeah, I already wear my suit of armor in my spare time. I can go and do that in a way that like massively helps people locally. So yeah, kind of the ACORN approach really is like meeting people where they're at and giving them the things that look like what they already expect of themselves, and then you can gradually push that boundary a little bit further until suddenly they're doing things that they would never have thought of, and they can be the person that spreads that out into the rest of their community, because they're like, oh, I know Dave, he does that stuff, that's so cool, maybe I could do it, I used to be like him or whatever. So that is a whistle stop tour. I hope that was useful. I'm going to drop some links in the chat so people can see what we're about, and if you'd like to support us, join up, become a member. The more strength we have, the more powerful we are. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to hearing the other speakers. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Kat. Really appreciate that. I've had an update from Alfie, who unfortunately sends his sincere apologies as something unavoidable has come up, and he can't make it this evening, sadly. We have obviously some more great speakers, though, even if Alfie can make it. And next up, we're going to hear from Chia Harrington, who's the former organising lead at Fuel Poverty Action. And she is going to be telling us about her role in the Feed the Weeds campaign with Unite for a Workers' Economy. Chia, thanks for being here tonight.
Okay, thanks, Mal. Yeah, so I'll talk a bit about our campaign. If anyone doesn't know what the word WANES means, it means like child, like young person. So the Feed the Wanes campaign was all about food poverty, really, and the link between how that relates to debt. So we realised that in Scotland there was quite a lot of school meal debt, where people were going into debt for school meals the children were buying. And we just didn't think that was right. We thought school meals should essentially be free for all students in Scotland. And this is where we formed a coalition campaign between Unite for a Workers' Economy, Debt Justice, and the STUC's Women's Committee to not only cancel school meal debt, but also try to expand free school meals for all. Um, and it was highly successful. We cancelled £300,000 of school meal debt across Glasgow before cancelling 1.5 million across Scotland when it escalated to becoming a national campaign. But it didn't start off like that. Originally, it started off as a small campaign run by Together Against Debt project, which is hosted by Debt Justice, where we went into the communities in Glasgow, basically asking what debt people in debt are experiencing. And one of the top issues that kept coming up was food poverty. And we'd already heard that in Edinburgh there'd been a case where they got all the school meal debt cancelled. So we wanted to do the same in Glasgow, basically. And it was strategic, the reason why we chose that campaign, because we wanted to choose something that was winnable for the small group that we, as a brand new group that just started out. We couldn't, with Together Against Debt on our own, we couldn't expand all free school meals, but we could cancel the debt in our local council. And we felt, I don't know if Kat would be familiar with the process of cutting the issue, but that was very much the case. It's an example of how you cut issues that are meaningful and winnable and resonate with a lot of people. And we thought that, you know, young people going hungry is definitely an issue that was prominent, especially when this was just after the cost of living crisis really hit. And another reason why we chose to do food poverty is because people in food poverty are also often in energy poverty as well. So it was one of our ways that we were trying to combat skyrocketing, the consequences of skyrocketing energy bills that are affecting people all over Scotland at the time. In terms of our strategy, to build the campaign, we used the Midwest Academy strategy chart, which basically helps you map out your allies and certain threats you might come across when choosing to take on a campaign. And it was very important for us to not just attack the council as an entity in itself, but to have our target being a person. So for us, it was Susan Aitken, who was the chair at the time, and we wanted to map what kind of leverage we'd have around her to make her change her mind to cancel the school meal debt. Because when we were originally talking to councillors, they did not listen to us. We were small, we didn't have much power at all. So we needed to think about how we were going to build that power to even get our foot in the door to have those negotiations to cancel the debts. And this is where I kind of, in my role, I did some power mapping, and that's thinking about in terms of who around around the people you want to influence, you map around them the people who they would most listen to. And this kind of worked for us because the people that the Labour councillors would listen to more than us were the unions. And I was very lucky to meet Claire Paydon and Scott Walker from United for Workers' Economy, who also were looking for a campaign at the time. And they were impressed by our outreach skills, going out to schools, doing petitions, doing the real grassroots work, and thought we were a valid group to help work and try to alleviate some of the issues around school meals. So once we created this coalition, we had so much more power at our disposal because we could target members in areas where there are high levels of school meal debt and get them to talk to their councillors. And we also had because we were now working with more recognised organisers, we had more Labour councillors supporting us, and as more Labour councillors supported us, so did other parties too. And basically, we went into one-to-one conversations with our councillors and encouraged all the people who were supporting the campaign to do the same. And what really worked is that it was a bit difficult because it was a bit of an SNP tactic, the reason why they cancelled the school meal debt. We had our demand of cancelling, of expanding free school meals and cancelling the school meal debt. And it was almost like, because they didn't want to expand the free school meals, they could do this lesser target, basically, by cancelling the school meal debt instead, and still look good for it. So I feel a bit weird about it. On the one hand, we didn't manage to expand the free school meals nationally as Unite wanted us to, but it was a very useful kind of thing to make them feel that, if you can't shoot, kind of like, if you can't shoot for the stars and then you end up somewhere on the moon, it's that having that higher aim did help us achieve the lower aim, which was cancelling the school meal debt. And that meant that because the SNP wanted to look good, they were quite happy to cancel all 1.5 million of that school meal debt. Yeah, that's kind of how it worked. Yeah, and that's probably all I have to say about the campaign. If anyone has any questions at the end, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thanks so much, Gia. Great to see you here. And yeah, what an amazing win, absolutely. I've never learned about this campaign that you're a part of, so it's fantastic to hear about it now. And next up we have Marianne Brown, who is the Communications and Community Engagement Manager of Bristol Energy Co-op, which aims to increase local clean energy generation, reduce emissions, and support community organisations and networks, as well as shape energy generation according to local needs, which is fantastic. Marianne, thank you for being here.
Cool, thanks for asking me. It's really great, amazing to hear and inspiring to hear from those campaigns from Kat and Chia in Bristol and up in Scotland. I really have to look up that guy in the night outfit. It just sounds amazing. So I think it's really good that we're all talking about this at the minute. I don't know if you guys have seen the recent polls by Climate Barometer and Climate Intelligence Unit, which showed there's real public support for the practical outcomes of net zero, i.e. building renewable energy projects, but not so much support, especially amongst reform voters, for net zero policies in general. So there's a real kind of gap between the way people perceive net zero and their actual desire for the outcomes of the transition to renewable energy. So community energy can do a lot to engage people on the benefits of transitioning to renewable energy. So what is community energy? For those of you who don't know, it describes a group of people who come together to buy, manage, and or generate renewable energy or to reduce energy use. So it can be solar rooftops, it can be hydro, it can be wind turbines, etc. So just across Britain, there are 580 organisations in 2023, and these contributed to £12.9 million to local economies and organisation spending and grants. So, it's small but powerful, excuse the pun. So we are Bristol Energy Co-op, so we're one of the more established co-ops. We've been around since 2011. Got 22 solar projects, includes community centres, council-owned buildings. So in Bristol, got an array on Bristol Beacon, the Bottle Yard 2, local businesses and charities. We've also got 2 solar farms and 2 microgrid schemes. Yes, thank you for putting that poll up in the chat. So what we offer, so it's really important to us as a values-driven organisation. It's really important. First and foremost is the benefit that communities get. Host sites, for example, get savings on their bills because most of the energy is used to power those buildings. And obviously carbon savings, but we also put a proportion of our revenues into community benefit grants. So community-owned projects generally, in fact, always put far more percentage of revenues into community benefit than a commercial project does. So, I mean, our fund supports community action on reducing carbon, making energy more affordable. So that's things like repair cafes, energy advice drop-ins, sustainable transport, community gardens, that kind of stuff. I wanted to talk about two examples of community energy projects, which I just find incredibly inspiring. So I don't know if you've heard of the wind turbine in Lawrence Weston. It's the biggest onshore wind turbine. It's entirely community owned. It went online last year, and they started getting revenues for it. Excuse me, this year. It's a really amazing story of resident sort of powered community action. So it started with a community group, just a group of residents just getting sick of being ignored and just feeling like, quote, to the forgotten estate in Bristol. That's Mark Pepper, who's one of the co-founders of the community group, who said that. So they worked together. They'd spent years doing incredible work, door knocking and just trying to engage with people, trying to put together a community development plan. So asking people, what do you like about living here? What don't you like? And what would you like to change? And then that fed into a neighbourhood development plan. And then they got involved in a solar farm, which Beck co-owns. And that kind of inspired them to really think about the money that could be made to make a difference to the community if they invested in a renewable energy project. So then this inspired the wind turbine. And so they, in the minute they make £100,000 from the wind turbine, and that will become more when they've paid off their debts, etc. And they also get some revenues from the solar farm. So this, what Mark said to me was that a lot of people don't even know about the wind turbine living in the estate, living in the area. But what they do know and what is really important to them is the actual changes and the positive changes that are being delivered by the community group. So they've got so they decide where money is going to go, and then those projects are actually delivered. So things like playgrounds or energy efficiency of homes and things like that. So people actually see the changes that they wanted in their community, and that's what matters most. So another project is called Barton Heat, and Kat, you might know. Well, I'm sure you know about all of these things, but ACORN, a representative of ACORN is really involved in this as well. So it's an amazing sort of collaborative thing. But so this is quite a long story. So settle down, get comfy. But it started a few years ago when a group of residents in Barton Hill were really alarmed by some plans to build a diesel power plant. And Bristol Energy Co-op got involved in opposing this plan. And then another plan came up to build another diesel power plant, and they managed to resist both of these projects and instead managed to get two battery powered projects built, one of which was for a while partly community owned. It isn't anymore, unfortunately, but the community benefit money from the community-owned battery project, are you still with me, went to fund a community group called Barton Heat. And this is a group of people who live in Barton Hill Estate. I think I can't remember how many tower blocks it is, Kat, you can probably tell me, but it's in an area where there's been horrendous problems with landlords. The council, they were in Barton, one of the tower blocks, they were evicted. I mean, this is another story. Do look it up if you're not familiar with it. It's absolutely horrendous, and they were just treated really, really badly. So people felt like they were really disempowered and they were just being ignored by authorities. Anyway, so this community energy project, which was funded through the battery storage project, They're really looking to set up a renewable energy generation that will serve the needs and be designed by people in the estate. And they've got universities involved, and they've got they're really gaining a lot of support. It's very small, it's very nascent, but it's really powerful. And crucially, and I'll be very quick about this, it's the group are hosting their activities in the same cafe. It's called Cafe Conscious, where there's an opposition group to the LTN, the Low Traffic Neighbourhood campaign. So you've got this group which was superficially very anti-net zero policy, next to in the same space as a group promoting a renewable energy project. And the thing that unites them is the sense of empowerment and sense of agency, a sense of actually doing something that meets their needs, where they're going to be listened to. So it's a really inspiring and important story basically to shout about. I'll stop there because I know I'm running over. But if you want to ask any questions or whatever, I'll put my email address in the chat.
Brilliant. Thanks, Marianne. Amazing to hear all the good work that's been done in Bristol. Unfortunately, I think we still don't have Matt Kerr here to speak. So we're already at the end of our lineup of speakers, which means that we have loads of time for discussion, which is fantastic. There's been lots of chat in the meeting chat, which is amazing. And I want to invite everyone who's here, who's been listening, to please come in with your comments, your questions, and also your own contributions if you have any. I suppose maybe a few things that to jog you a little bit, aside from questions that you have from our speakers, if you have any stories of getting people together in your neighborhood, or else in your village, in your town, I think we would love to hear them and hear what worked for you, and also what's worked for you to engage with your councillors, local politicians. That'd be fantastic. Just raise your virtual hand if you want to come in. You can find that in the reactions, but under the reactions button in the Zoom window. And yeah, thanks for all the links as well. Would anyone like to start off the conversation this evening? Dave, yes. I thought you might want to come in, Dave. You've been typing away. Yeah, please.
Yeah,
Come
I
in.
just we operate in Warsaw, which they've got the 9th worst fuel poverty in the country, and we've got some of the worst housing stock for energy efficiency in England. And a lot of the people who are in those homes are either vulnerable people or people on low income, so they're paying extra money to heat the homes, which is why we're really interested, and we've been interested in trying to set up a community energy project for even before COVID. It's just really difficult to get any political will at the moment. It's we're in a Conservative-led council, and we just keep hitting brick wall after brick wall. I'll give you an example of something. We applied for the building that we're in has got an EPC of F, and it's a council building. So we applied for funding, and we got funding through the Towns Fund of £192,000 to retrofit the building, and we were going to use that to become an example to people, to show people what the difference could be if you retrofit our building. And and so encourage people to apply for eco grants and this, that, and the other. This was 3 years ago in August. The council have got the money. We applied for the money, was successful, but because the council hold the purse strings, they wouldn't release the funding for us to upgrade their building until we obtained a lease, which they wouldn't give us because they're not allowed to give a lease to a building that's below a D. So we spent 2 years, it'll be 3 years this August, trying to get the work done, and they're just putting roadblock after roadblock. And it's their own building that we're trying to improve, and it's the community that we want to help. We've shown an example of what a retrofit would look like. It's really it really is frustrating. And the other thing we do is we deliver frontline energy advice, and one of the things we're part of the End Fuel Poverty Coalition as well, and the NEA, and one of the things that frustrates us is with energy companies is how they bounce people around, especially vulnerable people, until they give up with complaints. So we have that frustration, but yeah, we've done, and then the final. I'll shut up in a minute. But the final thing we find is with private rent landlords, we do energy surveys in people's homes, and the amount of people in private rent landlords who are scared to complain to the landlords because they're scared in case they'll put the rent up or they'll evict people, or they'll evict them, and they'll have nowhere else to go. So they just put up with cold, damp, really bad conditions, rather than try and do something about it. And even if we say, well, we'll go to the council, they'll say, no, I don't want to risk it. It's I'll just have to put up with it, And we've been in homes, and it's and that you wouldn't put your worst enemy in there. It really is bad, but they're just scared. It's an awful situation that people are in, and yeah, it's just trying to do something about it. It's trying to convince people to do something about it, and we do get the odd people who will do it, but then it's just getting the majority. In Warsaw, we have some really horrific accommodations, and I'll shut up now. Sorry.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, great. Thanks for coming in. Lots to unpack there. I feel like there's something for everyone. Maybe let's start with the community energy aspect of things. Marianne, do you have anything you want to come in on?
It's difficult. I mean, have you got what kind of relationships have you got with individual councillors, for example? Have you kind of
We've got a good relationship with one independent councillor, but because the Conservatives have got a massive majority in the council, they more or less wiped out the Labour last time there was elections. It's we just get the same thing. It's no, we ain't interested in community energy. It's not going to be. It don't meet our priorities, and Warsaw has got a really bad climate score. I think
what do they say the priorities are?
Their main priorities are regeneration, believe it or not. And I said, well, this comes under regeneration.
Yeah.
Well, it's the wrong kind of regeneration.
What do they mean by regeneration then?
I'll give you an example. They've just got £1.5 billion for a 10-year project to redo the town centre, and it's just to put more retail space, upgrade the retail space, and just make it more open plan, knock down some old buildings. And my argument is, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. Until you solve the social issues, you're not going to get people to come and visit the town you know, and we've got a lot of social issues in the town. The life expectancy from one side of the town to the other for men from east to west, which is 10 miles, the difference in life expectancy is 8 years
Oh dear.
in an 8 mile radius from the one side which is prosperous to the other side which is which ain't. So we've put proposals to the council, and we're just trying to bypass the local council now and go to Advantage West Midlands Combined Authority, but because the council are just putting roadblock after roadblock up, they don't want to do anything with climate at the moment, and community energy projects.
Yeah. It's so weird, isn't it? I mean, it's not even just about climate. It's actually about community wealth building as well, because you're not just,
yeah.
I mean, if you kind of I mean, I guess there must be a lot of sort of community support for what you're doing. Is there any?
Yeah, there is. I mean, we tell people to write to their MPs and write to the councillors and things like that. We've done, because we do energy visits and things like that, to help people save money on energy. And we take air quality and thermal imaging cameras with us when we go out and do these things. And we've done about, in the last 6 months, we've done about 300 home visits. So it's there's 4 of us that go out and do these home visits in 2 teams of 2, and so we're on 293, I think we're up to at the moment, and but yeah, and we talk to them about community energy, and we talk about energy, and we've just designed a course, and we just put it through CPD for energy awareness, to teach people how to understand energy bills and know their rights and the standard licensing conditions when it comes to energy and understanding energy, you know. And so but when it comes to everybody wants it, everybody would love to see community energy project. The overwhelming support we've got to do it is amazing, and we take this to the council, but now we're too busy on the town's fund and the town centre development. So, you know, it's really difficult.
And if you
short of getting pitchforks and storming the council house, I don't know what we can do.
Yeah, I mean, what comes to mind is just applying for funding, you know, central government funding, like the Community Energy Fund. But I guess you probably thought of that already.
Yeah, that's what we look at. And somebody's just putting pitchfork sounds like a good idea to me.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it sounds like you really explored all options apart from pitchforks at this point, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, central funding would be a brilliant idea. It's we're only a very small organisation at the moment, so we've only got a staff of 4 people. So it's you have to have, I think, to attract a lot of funding on that scale. I think you have to be a bit bigger than what we are, I think.
Okay. Well, there might be some resources. I mean, you probably looked at Community Energy England. What I can always I'm not sure. Yeah, our experience is different, of course, because we've always had contacts in the council we've been able to work with. So it sounds really, really difficult for you guys. What I might do is just take your email address and see if I can get any advice from folk here, if that's any use at all.
That would be brilliant. Anything, I'll take.
I know.
I'll take anything.
Yeah. Can you email me? I've put my thing in there already, and then can you?
I'll put my email address in, and anybody who can help.
Put our heads together.
I greatly appreciate it.
Thanks, Dave. Well, I think we also have maybe some other people who wanted to come in on some of the things you said. Ruth, perhaps? You're muted. Did you have a question?
I think Louise was before me.
Yes, maybe just to close off on what Dave brought. Maybe Kat or Chia, did you want to come in on anything? If not, I'll bring in Louise. Yeah, Kat, go for it.
Yeah, one, I'm thrilled to hear that you guys exist because it sounds like you're doing some really important work that's not being done by any of the other services in the area. I mean, yeah, definitely going to follow up with you afterwards. Got like my brain's going 100 miles an hour with all the stuff that you've been saying. But yeah, I mean, kind of like what Chia was saying in the talking about like the way they strategize their campaign and stuff. It feels like there's a really obvious way to cut the issue here of, you know, there's money here that the council has got behind red tape. And I think that is a thing that most people agree on these days, that, you know, there's a lot of bureaucracy in the way of things that genuinely improve our communities. And theoretically, something I imagine a Tory council would want to distance themselves from. I know they're making all this noise about, you know, like the green stuff, but at the end, it's a big pot of money and it could do something that would benefit the community. And that is something that really cuts through to most of the demographics that are going to care about this stuff. And if you guys can think of a way that that is going to be following them around in their political career as people who, you know, put up more red tape and didn't help you slash through it, that could be the thing that really resonates for people and stops it feeling like a complicated, you know, planning or fundraising technicality. But yeah, I would love to chat with you about some of this stuff.
Brilliant. Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
Actually, could I follow straight on from that because of a way to make it follow them around in their political career? I'm just wondering, it's hard. You can never know if you'll actually break through with a meme or a poster or something. But the story that you say of them saying, "Okay, here's the money, you can have it, but you need a lease, but you can't have a lease because you need to retrofit, and that is what the money's for." It's so funny that it might actually catch on if if you've got a cartoonist like in a national paper or a cartoonist to do a big poster locally or led by donkeys, or I don't know, sometimes you can get through with something that actually just catches people's imagination. It's such a classic case that maybe you could do something with it.
Yeah, again, with the we're in a council building is the problem, because you know and because we've not got a lease, I go to the board and I say I want to do all this. I want to embarrass them just so the world move on it. And the board at the charity go to me, well, I bet if they evict us because we've caused them too many problems, So I have to do what the board say, unfortunately. That it's
Yeah.
and they don't want to take a risk of because they're always going to promise to resolve it. They're always going to promise to resolve it, and I feed this back to our board, and the board say, well, we've waited this long now. Why don't we just wait a bit longer and a bit longer? And it's just so frustrating because I just want to get there with big placards and storm the place and and do a lot of proactive things. But when you've got a board that says, "Oh well, we're in their building," and they might, if they upset us, they might chuck us out. So it's what just, and then if they chuck us out, they just knock the building down and build houses on it, and then the community's lost an asset, another asset. So it's a balancing act with us at the moment. If it was a different council, maybe, but because the council's got such a massive majority, it's absolutely huge. We've got more independence than we have Labour, and we've only got 3 independents. So, so, uh, so yeah, you can see what we're dealing with.
Thanks, Dave. Good to hear from you. Cheer, do you want to come in or should I? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, also maybe I'll just say, I mean, you might have wanted to speak to Alfie as well from Hope for the Future, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. If you haven't maybe reached out to them already, they like sort of specialize in turning um like narratives around climate and like making them more appealing to councillors who um wouldn't otherwise like go for something like that. They kind of like work on, yeah, finding ways in which to make them appealing based on councillors' priorities. So it might be worth also checking in with them after the session. I'm sure I can share Alfie's contact with you, Dave.
That'd be brilliant. Yeah,
So
thank you.
I'll put some links in the chat. But for now, Louise, thanks for waiting.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, thank you. So I'm from Humber Unite community, and part of our area is Grimsby, the town of Grimsby. And Grimsby is one of the highest deprivation areas in the country. And there's a huge swathe of terraced houses that were built below sea level, and they suffer from damp. And the vast majority are rented. And so what we've been doing is there's been a community group set up called Logic, and it involves the mosque, the church, Unite Community, and various other community groups. And what we're doing is we're going door to door and knocking. There's over 2,000 houses impacted in this, and we're knocking on doors, and we've got damp meters. And what we're doing is we're asking people they go in. We don't go into the house. We don't take their names. We make a note of their addresses, but we don't use the addresses. The addresses are only collated so that we know we've called there. And what we do is we ask them to measure the damp, and we record the rooms with the damp and how much each room records. So in the winter, we've been getting readings of between 7 and 8. In the summer, they're dropping to 3, but some houses that we mapped the other day were still as high as 5 on the damp level. We take our phones with us, we go in like teams, and we take our phones with us, and people are photographing the damp. But again, we're not using that for anything else but our own this mapping exercise. And then what we're doing is we're looking at collating a report. And as part of that, we're working towards getting funding, because you spoke early on about report fatigue or fatigue reporting, and how obviously these people are frightened to report. They're suffering under the threat of no-fault evictions, where they're just thrown out, they're made homeless, and then the next tenant moves in and the damp problem is still there. If the individual house is treated, all that happens is the damp moves next door and makes next door even worse. So what we're doing with this report is eventually we're looking at getting funding, and just forgetting the fact it's landlords and it's a slum area, they're highly deprived, it's ripe for reform and all these other things. So what we're doing is we're looking at getting the funding to do the work on the damp proofing ourselves, so that it's done right across the terraces from one end to the other. And I know it's a big project, and I know it's ongoing. And as part of that, we've also been talking about community energy. And I've recently come back from my friends. I stayed for a week in Germany, and one of the things I was supposed to be on holiday, but one of the things I was doing was going around looking at their different areas and their social housing. And their social housing is great because they build flats, but they're like 3 stories but long and not high. and on top of those council flats, they're all got solar panels. So what I've been talking to one of my colleagues over in Grimsby, because I'm in Hull, is about how we can put together a campaign to start to get social housing providers to start to install solar panels, whether it's on, individual houses or flats. They can get solar panels, and a way, if it's possible, of looking at so the solar, the power that's generated goes into the house or the flat, but any extra, instead of going to the tenant, goes back to, that's any extra energy that's generated that goes back into the grid. Would there be a way of getting the payment to the social housing provider so that the social housing provider can then invest that money back in the area? Because these areas we're talking about, I mean, you're talking huge levels of deprivation. I mean, these are real slum areas. So it's just something we've been putting together, and it's working really well. And hopefully, Dave, I've got your email, so I'll email you tomorrow because I really want to connect with you. I think what you're doing is great. And I've made a note of the websites that you've put on the chat as well. So thank you for listening, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks so much for that, Louise. Yeah, great work. Going door to door. It's and building this bank. This like sort of data set. And so it sounds really helpful. Would anyone want to come in on that? On anything Louise had to say? Folks. Do we have any more questions for our speakers? Or do our speakers have? Yeah, Ruth.
Yeah, just going back to Marianne's presentation, I had two questions really. One was, can you say something about the battery storage project? Because I know a lot of places people are actually opposing battery storage, partly on grounds of fire danger. But there's also a risk that the batteries will be used to basically take a lot of the excess energy that wind turbines can produce and solar farms when it's windy or sunny, and store it and then sell it back at a profit instead of getting it to people who need it at the time. So that was one question. And the other one, I'm quite interested in this cafe conscious, is it called? And how the groups with quite different starting points actually get on and relate to each other.
Yeah, so the battery storage, I think that came about because planning permission was sought for the diesel power peaker plant. And it was incredibly polluting, obviously, and it was very close to a nursery school. And so there was a huge residential opposition, as you can imagine. So they managed to oppose the planning permission for that project, and instead got the battery storage project, because obviously that was hugely much more beneficial to the community. And at that time, Bristol Energy Co-op had a part ownership in that project. It's with Thrive Renewables, but we've since just very recently sold that. Thrive bought our share, so it's not.
Why did you sell it?
Why? I think it was quite a small. It wasn't a very big. It was just basically to use that money to then invest in more, developing more solar in particular, because we've got. I think the point of community energy as well is just it's not to covet, it's to support and then grow. You know, the kind of ownership model challenges sort of the traditional energy model, the sort of domination of commercial companies. So we don't really see ourselves as coveting assets. It's more just sort of opportunities, and the good story out of that was Barton Heat community project. So that obviously that was the result of that battery storage. Yeah, so I think generally we don't have any more battery storage projects on the sort of on the to-do list. Cafe Conscious. Yeah, it's a really. I recently wrote a piece for New Humanist about this actually. So if you subscribe to them, have a look at it. But I spoke to a guy called Stuart Phelps, who was involved in the residential campaign against the peaker plants, and he really kind of garnered support for Barton Heat, and Cafe Conscious is the main sort of meeting point for, it's a really important community hub for the people in the tower blocks on the estate. And they did a lot of work also when the evacuation, that Kat put the information there about the evacuation of the tower block Barton House. They did a lot of work distributing clothes and blankets and things like that to residents. So it's a really important sort of meeting point for folk there. And it was just an obvious place, according to Stuart, to just set up an office, a sort of, a place, because really integral to the Barton Heat was openness and accessibility for folk to just come in and see what they were thinking of, and then sort of, but not. He just wanted to make it a very kind of inclusive space. So it was just like they rented a space. Part of the money from the battery project, the community benefit, went towards funding a space in the cafe where it was just open. People could just wander in. You'd overhear conversations. It was just very kind of, and the same, I guess. I mean, I can't. I think that the centrality of that space was also important for the campaign, the anti-LTN campaign group, because it's also a local campaign and it's just such an important community space. And as I said, like the fundamental goal of both of these campaigns is agency and being listened to and a community voice and getting things built around community needs. And there was a real sense that the low traffic neighbourhood was ignoring local, like those community needs, and people were not being listened to. And it also fed into, as I said, the mistrust of the council because of the evacuation of Barton House. So all these things. So it's just, it just really shows the kind of the real fundamental importance of just like the actual community identity, like, where people met. And, it's sort of like really kind of a counter to this idea of net zero culture wars. It's not like, that's not what's important. What's important to people is getting their needs met ultimately. Like, obviously, it's not sort of taking a side for sort of like for like political reasons in these cases. Sorry, I hope that makes sense.
It does, but weren't there people for whom the politics was actually important, that they, deliberately using that kind of community setting to try to warm up, like anti-immigrant and anti-climate?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't know. I didn't interview a whole bunch of people from the anti-LTN group, but the impression I got, especially from the representative from ACORN, who lives in one of the tower blocks, who's kind of been involved in both projects, is that just people are just tired of not being heard. So I think that was really what ultimately what it came down to. But obviously I can't speak for everybody. I think Kat, you probably know a lot about this as well, I'm sure.
Yeah, if it's okay. Yeah, this is kind of unavoidable, this issue kind of in the communities we're organising in. And I would really second what Marianne has said around most of the opposition coming from people who disagree more with the way it's been implemented than the fundamental aim of reducing traffic or reducing pollution and making areas easier to get around. But I mean, I very regularly speak to people who it is now harder for them to get around, to access the services that they used to be able to walk to or to get to, by a short journey. And for context, some of the protests that were had to kind of oppose the LTN being implemented meant that then some of these things were done overnight with a police presence in a fairly racially diverse community. And I think this is actually ironically a really good example of where a project is not necessarily bad, but the way that it's communicated and designed with or without the community is ultimately been the downfall of its success. And I speak to a lot of people who either they, whether they're for or against the LTN as a concept, they most strongly feel about how it was forced on them, and that actually overrides most of their feelings about the efficacy and what it's done to the community. But I would also say that I think that, there are inevitable bad actors who are trying to, use this for some bigger narrative or, the culture war stuff, I guess you'd call it. And from what we've seen, those people don't really have the staying power. They don't actually engage in those communities. They don't really go to places like Cafe Conscious because they are just astroturfing. And I think it is also something that, as people trying to bring local people into our campaigns, particularly around stuff on climate, it's really useful. We found it really useful to understand like the difference between those two groups and how actually the people aren't as easily taken in by some of this stuff as maybe we think. Some people unfortunately are, but I would say it has been incredibly rare for me to come across people talking about war on motorists or climate net zero scams. By and large, it's the council doesn't care about us and they sent in police and drones to enforce something we didn't want. So yeah, it's been a really fascinating kind of time for that community, and I think what has actually really impressed me is how people have come together around places like Cafe Conscious and rejected a lot of these sort of national narratives. Obviously it's Bristol, so we don't have quite the same sort of reform insurgency stuff in these communities, but it has actually changed the tenor of local politics quite significantly, I would suggest. And I would say, as at ACORN, we don't take a stance on the LTN one way or the other, but we do take a stance on the way the council has handled it and the lack of transparency and like consultation with the community. So I think there's a whole mess of things going on there. But yeah, I think it's a really interesting case study, Marianne.
Yeah, we've all got a lot to learn.
Thank you.
Thank you both. That's really interesting. Yeah, we actually, maybe it's a good time for me to say that at the next Field for Thought, we're planning on talking about some of these, or like hopefully hosting some of these groups who are opposing battery storage in their local areas. I think, yeah, from what I've from the little bit of research that I've seen so far, it seems like people who are opposing these projects are not sort of doing it necessarily on, yeah, as part of like a culture war, even though you do see like these political influencers sort of encroaching on their discussions. Yeah, people are just doing it because they want to protect their their local common, and don't want to see another green field turn brown, essentially, rather than it really being about net zero or such and such. But yeah, hopefully we'll learn more about that next month. I'm wondering if we have any more questions for our speakers, or if maybe our speakers also just have some more things that they wanted to say, maybe that they didn't get to say in the first, that they didn't get to say earlier in their time. Yeah, Kat, Marianne, Chia. Okay, thanks a moment. Actually, Marianne, I wondered, a question from me, maybe I feel like maybe you didn't speak so much about engaging with your like combined authority, your mayor, or your mayor, and I wondered if you might have something to say about that also, because I'm aware this is something that Dave was talking about earlier as well.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, so yeah, we have relationships with government on lots and lots of different levels, right? From the sort of parish councils when we're kind of doing really sort of starting point community engagement in terms of like trying to identify sites. That's what we're doing in South Gloucestershire at the minute. We've got funding through the Centre for Sustainable Energy to do workshops, community engagement workshops, which are all about like getting communities to identify or to sort of think about where they live and how they value the landscape and where they like if they want to have see the benefits of renewable energy generation, where they might want to put it. So it's really kind of starting from the beginning, seeing it's really about co-design. So it's really about like we're not coming here to impose a project on you. We're coming here to think about what you guys need, where you want it to be, and how you want it to benefit you. So that's in sort of semi-rural. That's targeting semi-rural. So that's working with like really like the neighbourhood development plan. That's working within those parameters. And then council, like Bristol Council, we have assets built on council-owned buildings, as I said. So we rent the space basically from the council, and we've also had funding from the West of England Combined Mayoral Authority. Or is it mayoral? Anyway, so we've had a big grant from them, and that's part of their wider kind of the council as well, their wider decarbonisation plans for council-owned buildings. Sorry, that's Bristol City Council. So we've been kind of like part of discussions. We've managed to sort of insert ourselves into discussions about how to decarbonise council-owned assets. And
how have you done that?
how a lot of work. I think it's just a lot of networking, a lot of it takes years, as you know, like to build relationships with this is totally before my time. But our founder, one of our co-founders, Andy O'Brien, it took him years and years of just talking and talking and talking at people to build those relationships. And it was basically one councillor who kind of enabled or opened the door for us to build our biggest solar array on the roof of the Bottle Yard 2. So it's so down to, I mean, unfortunately, as Dave has shown, like it's so down to it's people, right? Personalities. So we were, I guess, lucky because we had that relationship, and we were able. And a big seller of our what we offer is that we can offer like 3 times the size of what the council would be able to pay for themselves. So this was the case with the Bottle Yard. They had a plan for a small array, but we said, look, if we come in, we can triple it in size. So that's what happened. And with the West of England Combined Mayoral Authority, they have grants. So we managed to get a £500,000 grant, which is something called the South West Local Solar Scheme, which we do in collaboration with another community energy group in Bath, which is all about solar, and it's all about it's all part of their net zero goals as well. So that's been a 2-year project to get 2 megawatts worth of rooftop arrays, and we've just completed that, and we've got a smaller grant to extend it. So that's on all sorts of different rooftops. I mean, it's such a long game, that you have to play, and there's so many relationships that end up in not serving anything. So it's a real kind of balance between as a community energy co-op, balancing like growth versus just maintaining your assets, because it's like maintaining your assets and just sitting where you are and just and letting that generate benefit, or taking the risk and growing. So it's a constant kind of like, we've always have to ask our members, is that what you want? Is that, are you sure, are you happy with us to continue investigating potential new sites? Because, it could be dead ends, or it could be 2 megawatts of solar on, community owned energy. So it's, as I say, it's a long game.
Thanks, Marianne. That's really, really helpful to understand. Kat, yeah?
Yeah, Marianne just sort of made me think of something. So ACORN was founded 11 years ago last week by some plucky young upstarts in East Bristol, because one of them got evicted before Christmas with no rights, just thrown out. And he was like, why doesn't somebody do something about this? Why isn't this illegal? And over a decade later, we're now looking at Labour legislation that will get rid of Section 21, which is one of the biggest causes of homelessness in the UK. It's no fault evictions and the stuff that makes people afraid to report things because of revenge evictions. And, you know, when we started, no one thought that was like on the cards for the first 5 years. After 5 years, it was maybe on the cards. And now it's, despite having had a pretty landlord friendly Tory government for quite a long time, and Labour, I won't say how I feel about some of their other policies, but I'm sure you can guess. But, you know, they haven't been pulling through on some of the stuff for working people that people had hoped. But this bill could actually massively change the game for the power dynamic inherent in the renting system. It will make people a little bit more secure, and that means we can fight for other things. People will be less afraid to take risks. And so when Marianne was talking about it, you know, being a long game of networks and relationships and stuff, you know, the stuff that might not seem that relevant today might be the thing that clinches you the, you know, the win 4 years down the road or whatever. And it's really hard to plan for that, unfortunately. But I think actually events like this are huge. Like, you know, we could be talking about the amazing work that Louise and Dave have done in 3 years' time, you know. And I think one of the things I'm definitely taking away from today is how cool all the different things people are doing and how they're all actually feeding into more resilient communities that have places to turn when, like, the weather gets worse politically or financially or economically. So yeah, I think, yeah, just reminding me to take that like long-term view. Like, it's not all bad, we're all fighting exciting things. And like, imagine if we all win. Like, if we all win the stuff that we're doing, like, imagine how great the UK would be. So that's, yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Cheers, Kat. And yeah, I mean, you know, as Chia was thinking, like to also think big in terms of the wins can give a bit of a boost. Like, is there any scope for, you know, if you win a ban on bailiffs in Bristol, like, is there any scope to expanding that nationwide?
I would just say we did already get Brighton and Manchester. They no longer use bailiffs on their lowest income residents. We know it's possible, and we will be going national this year. So watch this space.
Oh wow, amazing. Maybe you said that. Maybe you said that earlier. Okay, sweet. That's incredible, Dave.
That was Manchester and where? Brighton.
Dave, you want to come in?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, just before we wrap up, because I know we're nearly at the end. This has been really, really valuable, and I'm just really thankful for everybody who's offered to help and support us. And I look forward to chatting to everybody after this, and yeah, and attending some more of these. It's been really fantastic, and it's helped uplift our spirits after various knockbacks. So I just want to say thank you to everybody, and thanks for organising this and inviting us. It's been absolutely brilliant.
Thanks, Dave. It's great to have you here. Great to hear you. And Louise also. Please make sure you leave your email addresses in the chat, so I can collect them. Maybe I'll also, it'd be great to, in the follow-up email, also have a little bit to say about the projects that you brought to the session tonight, just to be able to share them with everyone else. It sounds like the session's kind of coming to a natural close, like maybe 10 minutes early. Again, I'm really sorry that we didn't have a full lineup of speakers as we expected, with Alfie not being able to make it and Matt also clearly being unavailable. But yeah, nonetheless, I think we still had a brilliant session. I'm going to put a few things in the chat from the fuel poverty action side of things. I'm going to invite everyone to sign the Energy for All petition, which is our main campaign for every household to be guaranteed enough energy to cover needs like adequate heating, lighting, cooking. You are oh yeah, please sign that if you haven't already. Hi Joseph. You're also invited to become a member of Fuel Poverty Action if you're not already. Yeah.
Sorry, Mel, are you gonna share all the links and the email addresses and stuff? Is that, or should we be copying and pasting furiously before this session ends?
No, I will share all the links.
All right, cool.
Email addresses, maybe I'll do them like, you know, by email individually, not in
Yeah, cool. Okay,
the
next one.
but yeah. You're invited to become a member of Fuel Poverty Action. If you want us to support you with your campaigns, or you want to represent Fuel Poverty Action at events or this kind of event or on the street, you're very welcome. And please also let us know how you found the session with the little form in the document. Yes, as Marianne said, I'll make sure to share everyone, get everyone linked up. And put in the calendar as well. Our next Fuel for Thought session is going to be on the 19th of June, so save the date for that. Thanks so much to Kat, Marianne, and Chia for being here, for making the session so informative, as well as Dave and Louise and Ruth. Thanks for speaking up. And give us a little wave and unmute yourself, say good night, and I'll end the session. See you next time.
Thanks so much for organizing.
Bye. Thank you, Emma.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.